You know that moment when everything shifts and you finally see things clearly? That's what happened to me in a fancy Roman restaurant when my own family laughed at me like I was some kind of joke. I looked around that table at all their smug faces and something inside me just clicked. "Seems like I'm not really family then," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was pounding like crazy. Then I just walked out. Here's the thing, they didn't know I wasn't just walking away mad. I was walking away with a plan. 30 minutes. That's all it took for me to pull out my phone and cancel everything. The venue, the catering, the whole event they were celebrating. When they realized what I'd done, their faces went completely white. "Hey, I'm so glad you're here with me today. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own life, like you're always the one left standing without a chair at the table, this story is going to hit different. Make sure to subscribe because we're diving into some real talk about knowing your worth." So let me tell you about Anna. That's me, by the way. Anna Morgan Caldwell, though it used to be just Anna Morgan. 5 years ago, I was this scrappy businesswoman who built Boston's most exclusive event planning company from absolutely nothing. I'm talking about putting myself through business school, working 3 jobs, living on ramen and determination. But I made it happen. Elite Affairs became the name in Boston. Every fancy gala, every corporate party where important people needed to look good, that was all me behind the scenes. I had this reputation for being discreet, detail-obsessed, and honestly, I could make magic happen when everyone else said it was impossible. The wealthy families in Boston, they all had me on speed dial. That's actually how I met my husband, Sean Caldwell. Picture this. I'm running this massive charity event for Boston Children's Hospital. Everything's going perfectly, and this guy walks up to me. Tall, dark hair that looked like he stepped out of a magazine. And this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Sean had that easy confidence that comes from never having to worry about paying rent or choosing between groceries and textbooks. He was charming, the kind of charming that old money guys just naturally have. But when he looked at my work, when he saw what I'd created, there was something real there. "So you're the wizard behind all this magic," he said. "So picture this," I said, gesturing around the absolutely stunning ballroom at the Four Seasons. My mom had been stressing for weeks about finding someone to plan her charity event. And I'm standing there thinking, wow, I think I just solved her problem. That one little moment changed everything. Before I knew it, I was the go-to event planner for the Caldwell family. And let me tell you, these weren't just any family, we're talking Boston royalty here. The kind of old money that goes way back to shipping empires and railroad fortunes. What struck me most about them wasn't the money itself, it was how effortless everything seemed. They never had to try too hard or show off. You could see their wealth in the quiet luxury of everything they touched. The way they moved through their world like they owned it. Because, well, they kind of did. Then Sean happened. 6 months into working for his family, this man started pursuing me like his life depended on it. He brought the same intense focus to winning me over that he did to running the family investment firm. And honestly, it was working. But here's the thing, there were red flags everywhere. I just chose to ignore them because my heart was doing all the talking. His mother, Eleanor? She looked at me like I was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. Especially after Sean introduced me as more than just the event planner. The little comments started immediately. Subtle digs about where I came from. Surprise in people's voices when they found out I was actually dating a Caldwell. I'll never forget what Eleanor said to me at our first dinner as a couple. "You've really done well for yourself." But her smile was ice cold. Then she added, "Self-made success is so very American." I should have listened to that pit in my stomach. But I was head over heels for Sean, and he seemed so different from the rest of them. More down to earth, less obsessed with family trees and social rankings. When he got down on one knee 11 months later, I said yes, even though part of me knew I was stepping into a world that would never really want me there. The wedding was basically the event of the year, no pressure, right? I ended up planning most of it myself because there was no way I was trusting anyone else with my own big day. But Eleanor had opinions about absolutely everything. The venue wasn't fancy enough for her taste, the menu was too experimental. And apparently our guest list was missing all the important people. I picked my battles, compromising where I could and standing my ground on the things that really mattered to me. Sean tried to keep the peace, but I noticed something that made my heart sink. He never actually stood up to his mother. Not once. After we got married, things got so much worse. They'd still hire my company for their events, But suddenly everything I did was wrong. They'd question every single decision, change plans at the last second, and then take credit for all my ideas. At family dinners, they'd ask for my opinion and then completely dismiss it. They treated my successful event planning business like it was some cute little hobby I did to keep myself busy. Eleanor would pat my hand and tell her friends, "Anna has such a good eye for these little things." Like I was a child showing off a crayon drawing. You know how some people just have this way of making you feel small? That was my mother-in-law. She'd pat my hand like I was a child and say things like, "Oh honey, it's almost like having our own little party planner in the family." The condescension dripped from every word. And Sean? He never once stood up for me. He'd just shrug it off later and say, "That's just how mom is. Don't take it so personally." But here's the thing, it was personal. And it only got worse as time went on. When the opportunity came up to plan Eleanor's 70th birthday in Rome, I thought this was it. This was my moment to prove myself. A whole week of celebration in the most beautiful city in the world, ending with dinner at this incredible Michelin-starred restaurant overlooking the Colosseum. I poured everything I had into making it perfect, calling in every favor and using every contact I'd built up over the years. But that's when everything started falling apart. The deposits for venues kept getting delayed. Vendors were calling me, asking when they'd get paid. When I brought it up to Sean, he just waved it off. "The family accountant is being extra careful with international transfers," he said. But then I saw his laptop was open, and there were the bank statements, right there in front of me. The investments had gone bad. Properties were mortgaged up to their limit. Credit lines were completely maxed out. The Caldwell fortune that everyone talked about? It was disappearing fast. But did I stop planning? No. I kept going, even using my own company's credit to cover deposits when I had to. I told myself it was temporary, that once Eleanor's party was over, Sean would sit me down and explain everything. Then came the morning we were supposed to fly to Rome. Sean was in the shower when his phone buzzed. I never, ever checked his phone. I'd always respected his privacy. But something that morning made me look. The message preview was right there on the screen from someone named V. "Can't wait to see you in Rome. Have you told her yet?" My fingers moved before my brain could stop them. I opened the message thread with Vanessa Hughes, Sean's college girlfriend. The woman his parents had always loved. The woman they'd expected him to marry before he met me. The messages went back months. They'd been planning, discussing their future. And yes, there was a baby. Their baby. Due in 4 months. I took screenshots, forwarded them to myself, deleted everything from his phone. Then I packed my bags, put on the biggest smile I could manage, and got on that plane to Rome with my husband and his family. Standing outside that restaurant now, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wouldn't confront Sean before dinner. I'd let everything play out exactly as planned. And when it all came crashing down, I'd be ready. Our flight had landed at Fiumicino Airport, just as the golden Italian sunset was painting Rome's skyline the most gorgeous shade of amber. I'd arranged private transportation for everyone. The entire Caldwell crew arrived in full force. Shaw's parents, Eleanor and Richard. His sister Melissa, of course, with her husband Grant. His brother Thomas came along too, with his wife Claire. Oh, and let's not forget the 2 sets of aunts and uncles. A whole convoy of sleek, black Mercedes vans waited at the terminal. I thought they'd be impressed. But instead, Eleanor's very first words after stepping off the plane were, "I thought I asked for the hotel cars, Anna. These seem a bit generic." I bit my tongue like I had so many times before. There'd been a scheduling issue with the hotel, so I'd arranged transport through Lux, a company that literally handles diplomats here in Rome. But she wasn't listening. She was already deep in conversation with Richard, their heads close together like always, whispering in that way that somehow always makes me feel invisible. At least the hotel went smoothly, or so I thought. The Hotel de Russie welcomed us like royalty. I'd arranged everything down to the smallest detail: champagne in the private lounge, bellhops handling our luggage, welcome baskets filled with Italian treats. I'd handpicked every suite based on the views and put together custom schedules for everyone. Eleanor took one glance at the itinerary I'd spent weeks building and tossed it aside. "We'll just play it by ear," she said with a wave of her hand. "The family already knows Rome pretty well." Our suite was stunning. A terrace with a view of the Spanish Steps, fresh flowers in every room, and a bottle of Shah's favorite Barolo waiting for us. But then his phone buzzed. Without a word, he stepped outside to take the call. I watched him, his voice low and serious. "Work?" I asked when he finally came back in. "Just some investment stuff," he muttered, not really looking at me. "Let's get ready for dinner." The welcome dinner I planned, a cozy, romantic evening at a charming little trattoria in Trastevere, ended up being the first real slap in the face. Somehow, right before we got there, the seating plan had shifted. I ended up at the far end of the table, nowhere near Shah. In between us were his aunt and cousin. The whole night felt like one long inside joke I wasn't part of. Story after story about past trips to Italy, ones I wasn't there for, flew across the table like I was just a stranger tagging along. At one point, I tried to chime in, ask about the Vatican tour we'd planned. But before I could even finish my sentence, Melissa cut me off. "Oh, Anna, we're actually going to do a little family shopping tomorrow instead." "Family shopping?" I asked, confused. Eleanor jumped in, smiling that cold, practiced smile. "Just a little tradition we like to keep." The pattern kept repeating day after day. I'd wake up expecting to see Sean, only to find his side of the bed empty again. Just a scribbled note left behind. "Grabbing breakfast with Dad." And that was it. Meanwhile, the rest of the family would vanish for hours on these spontaneous little outings, ones I somehow never heard about. Everyone was always in the loop except me. I'd walk into the hotel lobby and catch them whispering, only for the conversation to stop cold the second I got close. Dinner plans? Constantly adjusted to include old family friends who just happened to be passing through Rome. And every one of them looked at me the same way, like I was some stranger they'd heard rumors about. Like they were waiting to see if I'd figured it out yet. On the third morning I got my answer. Sean was in such a rush to meet his brother that he left his briefcase unlocked. And something in me just knew, look inside. So I did. What I found nearly knocked the air out of me. Separation papers. Drafted by the Caldwell family attorney. Dated 2 months ago. There was a proposed settlement that was laughable, barely a fraction of what I was legally owed. But what hit hardest was the script. Yes, a literal script. A speech Sean was planning to give during his mother's birthday dinner. Calm, polished, rehearsed. It laid out our upcoming divorce like it was some mutual, peaceful decision. As if I'd agreed to any of this. My hands were shaking as I snapped photos of every single page. There it was, plain as day, their perfect little plan. A neat, quiet exit for the wife who didn't fit the brand. Timed just right to cause the least embarrassment to the Caldwells, while leaving me humiliated in the most public way possible. That birthday dinner wasn't just a party. It was supposed to be the moment they erased me. But instead of confronting Sean, I did what I do best. I stayed calm. I got smart. I turned my anger into focus and started collecting evidence. Every day, I found a reason to go back to our room alone looking for more. And I found it. Bank statements showing huge transfers to offshore accounts. Printed emails about liquidating before word gets out. And then the note handwritten by Eleanor herself. Once this unpleasantness with Anna is behind us, Vanessa will be welcomed back properly. Vanessa, of course. Still, on the outside I was all smiles. I kept planning Eleanor's birthday like nothing was wrong. Confirmed the flowers. Finalized the menu. Sat down with the restaurant manager to iron out the details. But while they saw me as distracted by event stress, I was actually building my arsenal piece by piece. And on the morning of Eleanor's big day, I was ready. The morning of Eleanor's birthday arrived bright and beautiful. I woke up early, careful not to wake Sean as I slipped out of bed. There was a full day ahead of us, starting with a private tour at the Borgazza Gallery, then a relaxing lunch at a vineyard just outside the city. Later, we'd head back to the hotel to get ready for the big dinner that night. As the one who'd planned the entire evening, I needed to be at the restaurant early to make sure everything went off without a hitch. I was in the hotel's business center, double-checking final confirmations and printing the last details, when I heard Ellen's voice from the concierge desk next door. The wall between us was thin and her sharp tone carried right through it. "There will be 12 seats. Not 13, she said flatly to someone on the phone. "I don't care what the original reservation says, the seating chart I sent is final. No, that won't be a problem. It's all been discussed with my son. His wife won't be joining us for dinner. A family matter. No questions needed. She'll leave quietly." I froze. Those last few words hit me like a punch in the stomach. This wasn't some mix-up or last-minute change. It wasn't a mistake. It was planned, every bit of it. They'd made sure there was no seat for me on purpose. This wasn't about dinner. It was about sending a message. A carefully crafted humiliation, meant to look like I walked out by choice, not that I was pushed out. I shut my laptop, gathered my papers, and walked to the elevator with calm, deliberate steps. Once inside, I pulled out my phone and started putting a different plan into motion. If the Caldwells wanted a birthday dinner to remember, then that's exactly what they'd get, just not the way they imagined. I arrived at Aroma an hour before anyone else, like any responsible planner would. The rooftop setting was incredible. Rome spread out around us, the Colosseum glowing gold in the sunset. I walked the space, checking every detail. The place cards were handwritten. Eleanor's favorite white peonies and roses were arranged just right. The champagne was perfectly chilled. The 7-course tasting menu had been confirmed, and the birthday cake, a stunning 3-tiered masterpiece, stood ready in the kitchen. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Signora Caldwell?" Marco, the maitre d', asked politely. "Perfect," I replied with a calm smile. Even now, especially now, my work had to be flawless. This was the last event I would ever plan for them. And despite everything they'd done, I couldn't bring myself to do anything less than excellent. I went back to the hotel and changed into the midnight blue Valentino gown I'd bought just for tonight. As I did my makeup, I looked at myself in the mirror, steady hands, quiet eyes. 5 years. 5 years of trying to fit into a world that clearly never wanted me was exhausting. But not in the way the Caldwells might have hoped. They didn't break me. They just made me stronger, sharper, more sure of myself. That evening, the whole Caldwell family had planned to meet in the hotel lobby before heading to the restaurant together. I showed up right on time. Not early, not late, just right on time. They were already there, lined up and polished. Eleanor looked like she just stepped out of a magazine, wrapped in vintage Chanel, her diamond necklace sparkling under the lobby lights. When Sean saw me, his eyes widened just a little. Maybe it reminded him of why he fell for me in the first place. Or maybe he was already figuring out how long he'd have to keep pretending. "Anna, darling, you look lovely," Eleanor said with her usual fake warmth, brushing the air near my cheeks in her version of affection. "We're just waiting for the cars." The ride to the restaurant didn't take long, but it felt longer than it was filled with shallow small talk about all the day's plans I hadn't been included in. Not once did anyone ask where I'd been or how I was. As we rode the elevator up to the rooftop, Sean gently placed his hand on the small of my back. It used to feel tender. Now, it just felt like a performance for the benefit of the elevator attendant. The doors slid open and there it was. The rooftop terrace I had designed from scratch, now transformed into a magical dining space under the stars. Behind us, the Colosseum glowed in the distance, ancient and majestic. A symbol of glory, but also the fall of empires. How poetic, right? Eleanor stepped out first, greeted by clapping and cheers from the family. One by one, they made their way to the round table I'd chosen specifically for this night. It was set for 13. I walked behind Sean as he confidently slid into his seat beside his mother. I went to take mine where my place card should have been. But there was nothing. No chair. No setting. No name. Just emptiness. For a second I froze. Everything around me kept moving. Conversations carried on, laughter echoed. Chairs scraped the floor, all while carefully avoiding my eyes. Like I wasn't even there. Even the waitstaff, the same ones who had confirmed every little detail with me just hours earlier, looked uneasy. But no one said a word. "Is something wrong?" Eleanor looked up, all sweet and innocent, her voice just loud enough to get everyone's attention. Looks like there's been a mistake," she said. I felt my heart race, but I kept my voice steady. "My place setting's missing," I replied, trying to stay calm even though I already knew this wasn't an accident. The whole scene played out like a perfectly rehearsed play. Few confused looks. Subtle glances. Sean halfway out of his seat, putting on a show of concern that never quite reached his eyes. "That's strange," Melissa said, looking around the table. "Maybe someone counted wrong?" Richard cleared his throat. "There might have been some mix-up with the restaurant." Then came the line, the one that sealed it. Sean let out a small laugh like this was all a harmless joke and said, "Oops, guess we miscounted." They laughed. Not in a loud, obvious way, no, they were more subtle than that. Just a soft, knowing chuckle, like they were all in on the same little secret. And in that moment everything clicked. This wasn't a mistake. It was planned, down to the last detail. The public setting? Perfect for keeping me quiet. The missing seat? Just enough to humiliate me without making a scene. This was their way of setting the stage, a little story to tell later about poor Anna, who just wasn't cut out for life with the Caldwells. I looked around the table, taking in every face. Eleanor, all smiles, but her eyes practically glowing with satisfaction. Richard, uncomfortable maybe, but still very much a part of it. Melissa and Thomas, enjoying the moment a little too much. Their spouses looked guilty, but not enough to say anything. And then there was Sean, my husband, the man who once promised to stand by me no matter what, now watching me like I was some kind of social experiment. I could have made a scene, called them out, demanded a chair, thrown the whole thing into chaos. That's what they were waiting for, what they wanted. Eleanor would have rushed to console Sean, and suddenly I'd be the unstable wife. It would have been the perfect beginning to the story of our divorce. But I didn't give them that. I sat up straight, lifted my chin, and said the only thing that really needed to be said. Seems I'm not family. Just 4 words. Simple, clear, and sharp enough to cut through every fake smile at that table. I knew the moment I stepped off their carefully planned path. I'll show myself out, I said quietly. Keeping my head high, dignity had always been the one thing I refused to let go of, even in this marriage. Anna, don't be dramatic, Sean called after me. Right on cue. Another rehearsed line from their playbook. We can fix this. But I didn't look back. I just kept walking. Past the table. Past the stairs. Past the shame I refused to carry. The restaurant staff, who had seen it all unfold like a soap opera in real time, gave me those soft, awkward looks. I gave them a polite nod and stepped into the elevator. Only when the doors closed did I finally let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. And then another. And slowly the shaking in my hands eased. Outside, the evening was cool and quiet. There was a tiny cafe just across the street. Perfect view of the scene I just left. I sat down, ordered a strong espresso, and pulled out my phone. This was the moment I had prepared for. 30 minutes of freedom while the Caldwells probably toasted to a job well done, thinking they had finally gotten rid of the woman who never quite fit their mold. First, I opened a drafted email to Marco, the restaurant manager, one we'd agreed would only be used if things went south. It included everything. My credentials as the official event coordinator, proof I was the one footing the bill, and authorization to cancel the event on the spot. I hit send. Then came the calls. To the vineyard plan for tomorrow's lunch, the private Vatican guide for the next day, the Amalfi Coast yacht excursion, the luxury villa in Tuscany booked for their grand finale weekend. One by one I canceled every last plan, moved every deposit made with my own company card right back into my business account. With each confirmation of cancellation I felt lighter, like I was peeling off layers I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. That's when Sean's texts started coming in. First annoyed, then confused, then full-on panic as it dawned on him what I was doing. I didn't answer a single one. Exactly 28 minutes after I'd walked out of the restaurant, I finished my espresso and paid the bill. It was time. I stood up, smoothed down my Valentino gown, and crossed the street ready for the grand finale. This time I slipped in through the service entrance. I'd memorized it during the event walkthroughs. And now, I was walking straight into the moment Eleanor Caldwell's perfect little birthday illusion fell apart. When I did my final check earlier that day, Marco, the restaurant manager, pulled me aside, looking a little uneasy. "Senor Caldwell, are you sure about this? It's highly unusual." I gave him a calm nod. "I'm sure, Marco. And thank you for keeping this between us." I handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was everything we'd talked about, proof that the payment had been canceled, and that my company was no longer covering the dinner's costs. If the Caldwells wanted to continue their lavish little party, they'd need to pay for it themselves. Marco gave me a quiet, understanding nod. In the world of luxury events, relationships meant everything, and he and I had history. This wasn't our first time working together. I'd brought him several high-end clients from Boston in the past, so he owed me a few favors. He might have found the request a little odd, but he knew better than to question it. "When should I let them know?" he asked. "Give me 5 minutes," I said. "I want to watch from somewhere discreet." He led me to a small corner near the kitchen entrance, tucked away but with a perfect view of the table. The Caldwells were mid-toast champagne glasses raised high, grinning like they'd just conquered the world. The first course had just arrived. Eleanor's beloved imported Ostra caviar, her special request. Honestly, it was almost too easy to unravel her carefully planned birthday week. Most luxury vendors work in a tight-knit circle of trust, and as the event planner who'd made all the bookings, paid the deposits, and signed the contracts, everything was under my name. Not Eleanor's. Not Sean's. Mine. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Sean. "Anna, where are you? Stop being childish and come back." A moment later, another one. "Mom's upset. You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't bother replying. Instead, I messaged Carmen at the Villa Borza, their next stop in Tuscany. I had already canceled the reservation earlier, but I wanted confirmation. Carmen replied right away. "Everything's been canceled. We'll refund the tip separately to your account. Wishing you all the best." My phone buzzed again. And again. Then again. Sean was blowing it up with texts one after another. "The hotel just called. They said our reservation for tomorrow is canceled. What are you doing, Anna? This is ridiculous. Call me. Right now. This isn't funny. Fix it." I didn't reply. Instead, I messaged Marco. "You can go ahead." From where I was quietly watching, tucked away in a corner of the restaurant, I saw him walk over to their table, calm, professional, not alone. 2 other staff members followed behind him. He leaned down and whispered something to Richard, who was sitting at the head of the table, right across from Eleanor. First, nobody really noticed. The family kept eating, chatting like nothing was wrong. Then Richard's face changed. First confused, then clearly concerned. He pulled out his wallet, started talking faster. I could see Marco shaking his head, politely but firmly. Then he showed Richard something on his tablet. Whatever it was, it landed hard. Now the whole table had gone quiet. Eleanor, always the picture of control, gently set her fork down, her perfect posture starting to stiffen. I saw the first crack in her icy armor. Sean looked glued to his phone. He was probably reading the message I just sent him. "All deposits have been refunded. Everything for this week canceled. The truth about your family's finances is about to go public. Enjoy your caviar." It all unfolded like a perfectly timed performance, only this time I was the one directing it. Richard shot up from his seat, face red, either from rage or shame. Maybe both. Eleanor clutched her diamond necklace like it might save her from the moment. Melissa was whispering frantically to her husband, and Thomas had his phone out, probably scrambling to confirm what was going on. And Sean? He just sat there, frozen, pale. Unlike the others, he knew exactly what this meant. He knew I'd found out the truth: the hidden bank accounts, the offshore money, the fake image they'd been selling for years. He knew what it would look like if his mother's friends found out the Caldwells couldn't even pay for a dinner, let alone hold on to their precious lifestyle. My phone rang. Sean. Not texting this time. He was calling. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Anna," he hissed. His voice was tight, furious, but also scared. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I didn't flinch. "Seems like I'm not part of the family," I said calmly. "So why would I be in charge of the family celebration? You need to fix this. Do you even know how embarrassing this is for my mom? For all of us?" "Oh, I know exactly how embarrassing it is, Sean. That was the whole point." He went quiet for a second, then softer. "Where are you?" I could hear the shift in his tone. Desperation. "We need to talk. I can explain. About Vanessa. About everything." "Oh, I'm sure you can. Anna, please. I've seen the bank records, Sean. The emails. I know the Caldwells are going broke. I know you're hiding money offshore. And I know you were planning to file for divorce the second you thought I wouldn't fight back." There was this sharp inhale on the other end, the sound of someone realizing they just lost control. He hadn't expected me to figure any of this out. None of them had. They always thought I was the outsider, the afterthought, the quiet little woman who wouldn't dare speak up. "That was private," he finally muttered. Just like the text from Vanessa? About the baby? I asked. Just like the draft announcement you were going to read at your mother's birthday dinner? Just like the seating chart you all planned, the one that made sure I didn't have a place at the table? Silence. In the restaurant, I saw Marco now talking to the whole table. Everyone looked shaken. Around them, other diners were starting to whisper, glance over, point. The Caldwells were officially the night's main event. Their carefully crafted image? Cracking in real time. Exactly the way they had planned to break me. Anna, please. Sean's voice wasn't smooth and smug like usual, it sounded shaky, desperate. You don't get what this means for us. Oh, I get it perfectly, I said, calm and clear. That's exactly why I did it. He tried again. We can fix this. Come back to the hotel. I'll meet you in 20 minutes. No, Sean, I said, my voice steady. There's nothing left to fix. I ended the call and stepped out from where I'd been watching. This was it, my last act as a Caldwell. As I walked toward the table, 12 heads turned to look at me. Some were glaring, some frozen in shock, others just confused. Eleanor was the first to speak, her voice tight with fury. How dare you ruin my birthday? I smiled, not out of cruelty, but because I felt oddly calm. Free. I learned from the best, Eleanor, I said softly. Isn't this what you wanted for me? A public takedown? A humiliating exit? I paused, then added, only difference is I rewrote the ending. Richard shot up from his chair. This is outrageous. You had no right. I had every right. I cut in, turning toward him. Every contract, every booking, every single arrangement was in my name or my company's. I just made a few adjustments. Melissa sneered. You'll regret this when Sean divorces you. You'll walk away with nothing. I looked straight at Sean. That's where you're wrong. I took a breath and said clearly, I have everything. Copies of the offshore accounts, the hidden money, the fake business records. The IRS is going to love it. Their faces turned pale. It hit them, the full weight of what I'd done. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. Not really. What I felt was free. Finally, I turned and walked away from the Caldwell family for the last time. The next morning, I left Italy first class direct to Boston. Booked with reward points I'd earned planning all their luxury vacations. The irony wasn't lost on me. Behind me, a crumbling mess. The grand image they worked so hard to protect? Shattered. Later, I heard through the hotel concierge that they couldn't pay the dinner bill. Eleanor had to leave her vintage Bulgari bracelet as collateral until a wire transfer came through. Word spread fast. Rome's luxury circles were buzzing about the prestigious American family who couldn't pay their bill. Vendors I hadn't already canceled started demanding full payment up front. No more polite trust. Just cold hard cash. My phone blew up. Dozens of messages, some furious, some practically begging. I read them during my layover in London, sipping Earl Grey in the British Airways lounge. From Richard, you'll be hearing from our lawyers. From Melissa, you've ruined your life. From Thomas, did you really think you could humiliate us without payback? Eleanor's message stung the least, probably because it was exactly what I expected. I always knew you were beneath us. This childish stunt proves it. But Sean's texts? That's where the truth really spilled out. You have no idea what you've done. My father had a heart scare. Is that what you wanted? The Prescotts and Whitmore saw everything. Do you even understand what that means for us? The hotel's now demanding full payment for the week. They say all guarantees are void. And finally, please, Anna, talk to me. This isn't just about us anymore. I didn't reply. Not to any of them. Instead, I forwarded all the financial documents I'd collected to my lawyer, with clear instructions. Keep them safe, just in case. If the Caldwells tried to take legal action, I'd be ready. The day I got back to our Beacon Hill brownstone, I didn't waste time. I called a moving company and asked them to pack up only the things that were truly mine. My clothes, jewelry I paid for myself, the first edition books I'd collected over the years, and the artwork I'd bought long before I ever said, I do. Everything else? I left it. The wedding gifts, the things we bought together, it could all stay. I wanted no part of anything that still had strings attached to that family's lies. 2 days later, a small headline popped up in the Boston Globe Society section. Investment group under investigation. Just a few vague lines about money issues and unhappy investors, but it was enough to get people whispering. In Boston's social scene, even a small crack in the armor makes noise. A week after I flew back from Rome, Sean showed up at my new apartment. No warning, no call, just there. He looked worn out, like the stress had finally caught up with him. That perfect, polished image he always carried around had started to crumble. "You need to come home," he said the moment I opened the door. "This has gone far enough." I didn't even blink. "This isn't some kind of power move, Sean. This is a divorce." He walked right in without asking, running his hands through his messy hair like he hadn't slept in days. "The SEC is digging through my father's accounts. 2 board members already quit. My mom had to cancel her gala. Half the donors backed out." I crossed my arms. "Sounds like a Caldwell problem. Not mine." "It is your problem," he shot back. "We're still married. If I go down, you go down. My debts are your debts." I couldn't help but smile a little. "Not when I have proof you left me out of every financial decision on purpose and hid money so you could screw me over during the divorce. My lawyer says that's more than enough to protect me." And just like that, his whole act fell apart. Sean sank into my couch and buried his face in his hands. "I never wanted it to end like this," he said. I sat down across from him, keeping my voice steady. "Then what did you want, Sean? To marry me because I'm good at planning parties? Because I made your family dinners look like magazine spreads? Was I just a placeholder while you rekindled things with Vanessa? Something to throw away when I didn't fit the image anymore?" He looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't always like that. I did love you, but not enough. Not enough to stand up to them. Not enough to tell you the truth about the affair." Strangely enough, I felt calm. "When's the baby due?" I asked. His head jerked up, shock written all over his face. "How did you?" "For months," I said, not looking away. "At least that's what the messages said." "Congratulations." Silence hung in the air like thick fog. Outside, the rain had started tapping gently against the windows of my new apartment. It was smaller than the old brownstone, but it was mine. Mine alone. Paid for with money I earned from a business I built from scratch. No Caldwell name. No Caldwell favors. Just me. Sean finally broke the silence. "I'll give you whatever you want," he said, voice low. "Just hand over the documents. Sign the NDA. Name your price." And that's when it hit me. After 5 years they still didn't get it. The Caldwells still thought I was like them, someone who could be bought. That money would make everything go away. But I looked him in the eye and said, "I don't want your money, Sean. I want my freedom. I want the truth out there. That's it." I stood up. Conversation over. "The documents stay with my lawyer. Unless you come for me, then we both go down. The divorce is simple," I said. "You leave with your things. I leave with mine. And, Vanessa, the baby," he whispered. "That's between you and your conscience," I told him. "I just hope you're a better husband to her than you ever were to me." After he left, I stood by the window watching the rain turn heavy. Over the next few weeks, the storm outside turned into a scandal. The Boston Globe ran a deeper story on Caldwell Investment Group financial red flags. Missing money, silent investors quietly pulling out. Eleanor got booted off a few charity boards, officially honorary. But we all knew what that meant. And Vanessa? She was photographed outside her OBGYN clinic, showing off a diamond ring. The math didn't lie. Their affair had started way before my marriage ended. In Boston's high society, cheating isn't uncommon, it's just supposed to be quiet. They broke the golden rule. Never get caught. Meanwhile, my business? It was thriving. Clients who used to look down on me suddenly respected me. Not out of pity, but because I didn't sell out. I didn't fold. They didn't whisper about a woman scorned. They admired a woman who walked away with her dignity. 6 months later, an invitation showed up in my mailbox and I actually laughed. It was a request to bid on Eleanor Caldwell's next charity event. Desperation clearly beat out pride. I sent a polite decline. "Schedule's full." It wasn't, but my standards were. The divorce was finalized without a single fight. The Caldwells were too busy trying to save face and patch up their finances. They agreed to everything I asked. Sean married Vanessa. Quiet ceremony. Their baby arrived 2 weeks later. I didn't send a gift. Exactly 1 year after that night in Rome, I was back in Italy. This time, planning a celebrity wedding on the Amalfi Coast. I was standing on a terrace, phone in hand directing my team, ocean in the background, and I realized something I didn't expect. I was happy, not in spite of my marriage falling apart. Because of it, the Caldwells tried to shrink me, fit me into their perfect little narrative. But all they really did was free me. Losing the life I thought I wanted gave me the one I was meant for. Not approval from people who never truly accepted me, but the strength to finally stop needing it. I raised my glass to the sunset that evening, and silently toasted the empty chair beside me, the one that reminded me more than anything else where I truly belonged.